It was a busy evening at the city train station. The loud whistles of trains, the sound of footsteps, and the voices of vendors filled the air. People were in a rush, some going home, some leaving for faraway places. Among them stood a young man holding a small paper cup of tea, waiting for his train like everyone else. He looked calm on the outside, but inside his mind was full. He had just finished an important meeting in another city and was now heading home. As he stood near a bench, sipping his tea slowly, something caught his eye. A figure was sitting on the ground near one of the old pillars, quiet, still, and almost invisible in the crowd. It was a woman. She wore old, dusty clothes. Her hair was messy, her face pale, and her hands were shaking slightly. A small metal bowl sat in front of her with only a few coins. People walked past her without even looking. He would have looked away too. But something made him stare a little longer. There was something about her. Her face. It wasn't completely clear, but a strange feeling filled his chest. A memory he couldn't quite place. He tried to ignore it, but his eyes kept going back. He stepped a little closer, pretending to scroll through his phone, and glanced again. Her head was down. She looked tired, weak, and lifeless, but just then she raised her face slightly. And that's when everything stopped for him. His eyes widened. His breath got stuck in his chest. The tea in his hand no longer mattered. The sounds of the train station disappeared for a moment. He knew that face. It was her. The same girl he had once dreamed of marrying. The same girl who had once looked so full of life and pride. The girl who had once looked him in the eyes and said, "We're not the same. I can't be with someone like you." His mind went straight back to those days when he used to walk behind her like a fool, hoping for a smile, a word, a sign that maybe she cared. She was beautiful, confident, and smart. They were in college then. He wasn't rich, just average, but he had feelings that were real. He had even confessed his love to her one day, shaking with fear and hoping for a miracle. But her answer wasn't gentle. It was cold. She laughed. Not loudly, but enough to make his heart break. He remembered the pain, the embarrassment, the way he walked back that day alone, with his head down. That rejection had stayed with him for a long time. And now years later, she was sitting in front of him again, but not in a fancy dress or behind a college desk. She was sitting on the cold floor, her back against a cracked pillar, her hands trembling from hunger or shame, maybe both. He blinked a few times, not sure if this was real. Could it really be her? He looked around. No one else seemed to notice her. No one cared. He took a deep breath and stepped a little closer. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe it just looked like her. After all, time changes people. But then she looked up again. Their eyes met. And in that moment, he knew without a doubt it was her. Her eyes widened too, just a little, like she had also recognized him. But then she quickly looked away, pulling her scarf over her face, as if hiding from a ghost of her past. He stood there, frozen, holding the now cold cup of tea. His heart was racing. It wasn't anger he felt. It wasn't happiness either. It was something else. A mix of shock, sadness, and a strange kind of pain. Why was she here like this? What had happened? He wanted to walk away. Part of him said, "Let it go. It's not your business. She hurt you once. Leave her where she is." But another part said, "You're not the same boy anymore. You've grown, and maybe she needs someone now." He took a slow step forward. She didn't look up. He gently placed the cup of tea down on the ground, a few feet away from her. Then he turned around and walked back toward the bench. He sat down but kept looking in her direction, unsure what to do next. Inside, questions were rising fast. Was she alone? Did she have anyone left? Was this really her life now? And more importantly, should he talk to her? He sat on the bench, eyes still fixed on her. She hadn't touched the tea he left near her feet. Maybe she didn't want it. Or maybe she was still too shocked to move. He looked down at his hands. They were steady. But his heart was not. How could someone so full of pride, who once rejected him so confidently, end up like this? His mind pulled him back to the past again. They had met in college. She was one of the popular girls, well-dressed, always surrounded by friends, and always confident. He was quiet, simple, the kind of guy no one really noticed. But he had noticed her from the first day. The way she walked, the way she smiled, the way she raised her hand in class, it all stayed with him. At first, he never planned to talk to her. She was out of his reach, he knew that. But fate had other plans. One group project had made them sit together. That's where it all began. They started talking, slowly, just a few words at first. Then more. He helped her with assignments. She laughed at his silly jokes. For a short while, he thought maybe, just maybe, there was something real there. But when he finally gathered the courage to express his feelings, she had shut him down. Not just with words, but with pride. "You're a good guy," she had said. "But we don't match. You don't have the background I'm looking for. My family wouldn't accept this." He still remembered the sting of that sentence. After that, they drifted apart. He never tried again. He buried his feelings and focused on his studies. She moved on, and eventually, so did he. Or at least he thought he did. But now, sitting just a few meters away from her, all those emotions were waking up again. Not love. Not revenge, just confusion. She looked so lost, so weak. So far from the girl he once knew. Finally he stood up again. Something in his heart told him he had to speak to her. Not to hurt her. Not to ask why she treated him that way. Just to know what happened. He walked back slowly, carefully, so he wouldn't scare her. She noticed his footsteps and looked up. This time, she didn't look away. They stared at each other for a few seconds. Then, in a soft, dry voice, she spoke. His name, he was shocked. She still remembered it. "Yes, it's me," he said gently. "I wasn't sure it was you, but now I am." Her lips trembled. She tried to smile, but it faded quickly. She looked down again, ashamed. "I didn't think you'd ever see me like this," she said. He sat on the ground next to her. He didn't care what people around them thought. What happened? He asked softly. She stayed quiet for a while. Her eyes filled with tears. Then she began to speak. She wiped her eyes with the edge of her scarf, took a deep breath, and started speaking, her voice low, tired, almost broken. "After college, everything changed so fast," she said. "My father passed away 6 months after I graduated. Heart attack. He was the only one who truly understood me." He listened silently, not interrupting. "We lost everything after that," she continued. "There were debts we didn't know about, loans, business troubles. It was like the ground under my feet had disappeared overnight." She paused, her eyes staring at the crowd passing by, not really seeing them. "I got married soon after," she said, "a man my mother chose. He seemed kind at first, well settled. Promised to take care of me and Mom. But the truth came out later." Her lips tightened. She tried to keep her voice from shaking, but it trembled anyway. "He never loved me. He only married me for status. When he found out we had no money left, he became cold, distant, then cruel." Her eyes filled again, but this time she didn't cry. "One day, he left, just like that. Took what little we had, vanished, no goodbye, no support, nothing." The man beside her felt something tighten in his chest. This woman who once had everything, friends, status, comfort, had lost it all. "And your mother?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "Gone too. Illness. She couldn't take the stress. I tried to manage on my own, but life doesn't wait for you to catch up. I had no money, no home, no one." He didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. What could anyone say to such pain? For months, I looked for work. Any work. But I had no address, no phone, no clean clothes. I was just another burden in the city. She looked at him, her face full of pain. There were nights I slept on cold floors, days I didn't eat. And the worst part? She paused. No one cared. The man felt a strange ache in his heart. He thought back to the day she rejected him. How proud she looked then. How sure. She was about her future. And now, here she was, tired, broken, hungry, not asking for love, not asking for pity. Just sitting in silence. I don't want to beg, she whispered. I never thought I'd end up like this. But sometimes, life doesn't give you choices. He looked at her hands, once smooth, now rough and shaking. He looked at her eyes, once full of dreams, now heavy with loss. And suddenly, his past. Pain didn't feel like a wound anymore. It felt small, faded. She wasn't the same person who had hurt him years ago. Life had punished her enough. She looked away again, clearly ashamed of being seen like this by someone she once knew. But he didn't look away. He didn't feel hate. He didn't feel pride. He just felt human. And something deep inside told him this wasn't the end of her story. Asterisk. The sun had begun to set, and the station lights flickered on one by one. People were still walking past, busy with their own journeys. But in that one small corner, two people sat still, sharing a moment that was heavy with memories and quiet pain. She rubbed her hands together for warmth. He noticed her fingers were red from the cold, maybe from hunger too. You didn't deserve this, he finally said, his voice gentle. She gave a small laugh, not from joy but sadness. Maybe I did, she whispered. I used to think I was better than others, that I could choose my future, that I knew everything. He said nothing. She looked at him again and added, back in college. I hurt you. I remember how you looked when I said those words. I was cruel. I thought you weren't enough for me. But the truth is, I wasn't enough. Not in kindness, not in understanding. He looked at her, truly looked at her, not as the girl who once rejected him, but as a woman who had been through far more than she ever expected. I was angry for a long time, he admitted quietly. After what you said, I stopped trusting people. I kept my heart locked up, but eventually, I learned how to move on. I worked hard. Life wasn't always easy, but I got through. She nodded, then looked down. That's good. I'm glad. You did. He reached into his bag, pulled out a small packet of biscuits, and gently placed them beside her. She looked at them, surprised. I don't have much with me right now, he said. But you shouldn't go hungry. She didn't touch the packet. Instead, she looked at him with teary eyes. Why are you being kind to me? She asked. After everything I did to you, why would you help me? He paused before answering. Because I've changed, he said softly. And maybe you have too. We all make mistakes. Life humbles us in ways we never expect. She looked away, blinking fast to hold back her tears. He could see her pride still tried to protect her, but it was thin now, barely holding. Up, you don't have to stay here, he continued. If you want, I can help you get to a shelter, somewhere safe, somewhere warm. She didn't answer at first. The silence stretched between them. Then she said, I'm scared. I've been alone so long. I don't know how to ask for help anymore. You just did, he said with a small smile. Her lips trembled. And then slowly she nodded. It wasn't much. Just a small nod. But it meant everything. For her, it was a beginning. For him, it was forgiveness. For both, it was something quietly powerful. The night had fully settled in. The crowd at the station had thinned, but he was still sitting beside her, quietly, no rush, no judgment. After a long pause, she slowly reached for the packet of biscuits he had placed beside her. Her fingers were shaking, not just from hunger, but from emotion. She opened it carefully and took a small bite. He noticed how gently she ate, like she didn't want to appear desperate. even in her lowest moment. "Thank you," she said softly. Barely meeting his eyes, he stood up slowly and stretched his arms. Then he offered his hand to her. "Come with me," he said. She looked up at him, unsure. "I'm not asking for anything," he added. "But you don't have to sleep here tonight. I know a place, a shelter. It's clean, safe. They give food. No one will hurt you there." She hesitated. She looked at the ground, at the worn shoes on her feet, the blanket beside her, the people who no longer noticed she existed, and then she reached out. Her hand landed in his, and he gently helped her stand. She stumbled slightly, but he held her steady. It had been a long time since someone had touched her hand without pity or disgust. Just kindness. They walked together too. People who had once walked very different paths, now walking side by side. He guided her carefully through the narrow lanes outside the station, to a small shelter he knew of. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was warm and welcoming. Volunteers smiled, offered clean blankets and hot food. She looked around with wide, tired eyes. It had been so long since she had seen such simple kindness. As she sat down inside, sipping a warm bowl of soup, he stood near the door, watching her quietly. She looked up. "I'll never forget this," she said, her voice clear for the first time. "You didn't just help me tonight. You helped me believe again." He gave a small nod. "Everyone deserves a second chance," he replied. "Even the ones who once broke our hearts." She smiled faintly, her eyes filled with tears, but this time not from shame or sadness, but from something softer. Maybe even hope. He turned to leave, but before he could step out, she called out, "Wait." He paused. She said, "You were always more than enough. I just didn't see it back then." He didn't reply. He just gave her a gentle look. That said, "It's okay. We've both changed." Then he walked out into the night. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone anymore.